Good evening. Today is the 7th of August, 2021. I'm Robert Cressionnie.
And I'm John Gatsis.
Welcome to America in Danger. Another hour of looking at things with a little different perspective than many people.
Well,
many news outlets.
Well, that's the key point. And
it is.
Not so much many people. I think there are a lot of people who might, at the minimum, be receptive to the things that we talk about in our perspective. I think they aren't allowed to hear that perspective through the mainstream media.
I think you're right.
And certainly through the educational apparatus in this country, they never hear these things, and so they get a very stilted and one-dimensional view of the world and of this country and its history.
And that is so evident when you speak with people sometimes, especially in the area of China. And I've heard so many times, well, China's just a competing economy. China's, they're just trying to come of age. They're just trying to develop in a new age.
Or a rapidly developing nation. And we need to cultivate a robust relationship with them and yada, yada, yada.
Exactly. Yeah. And the truth is about China, China is still a communist nation.
They remain a communist dictatorship.
Steadfast.
Yes, steadfast. In fact, really ramping up in their authoritarianism in recent years. I mean, given the choice between economic success and control and top-down dictatorial control, they always opt for the latter. They'll sit tight for the economic ascendancy if it means they'll maintain their communist hegemony within the nation.
Yep.
And Xi Jinping has made it clear that's the priority. And of course, with the West fully aiding and abetting their economic ascendancy, they have very little difficulty doing the latter.
This is true.
Yeah.
And in fact, we've seen that here recently in just the last month or two with them really cracking down on enterprise.
That's what prompted my statement, those very events.
And notice I didn't say free enterprise.
That's correct.
Because it's anything but free enterprise in China.
That's correct.
Now, China has invested billions of dollars in a pro-China propaganda campaign.
Mm-hmm.
They have gone in and bought professors in universities, think tanks.
Mm-hmm.
They bought a state-of-the-art movie studio to produce pro-China ads, commercials, what have you. They bought media outlets and hired journalists to work specifically to report things from a Chinese perspective. In other words,
pro-Chinese perspective.
Perspective.
With no criticism, no objectivity.
Correct.
Right.
And you would think that people would say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to go to work for China because I'll just be spouting propaganda for them because that's what they're hiring for.
They probably pay well.
They pay extremely well. That's why they can get these people. In fact, in one hiring session in Asia, they advertised for 90 positions. They got 6,000 resumes.
That's amazing and demoralizing all at the same time.
It is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. They have bought into advertising in the Wall Street Journal, in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Washington Post, and many other newspapers in this country. And they put big money into universities.
We know about the Confucius Institutes, for example.
Confucius Institutes, absolutely, operating in the universities.
Right.
They put money into sports in this country. Hence, the refusal of some big-name stars
and owners, like Mark Cuban, for example, the first one that comes to my mind.
Yep.
And I don't even follow sports, folks. I mean, I really couldn't tell you more than just a superficial information about what goes on there. But I know about him because I've watched his China posture, and it's disgusting.
It is.
Yeah.
It absolutely
As is most of the members of the NBA and the entire NBA. Who is it? Nate Silver? Isn't he head of the NBA?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't follow that much myself.
Well, he's a Duke alum, so I picked up on that. And kind of a alien-looking, strange-looking, bald-headed guy. I mean, but just an absolute coward when it comes to the, and probably an opportunist and somebody who's getting rich because of it. But his posture with respect to China is equivalently disgusting. Okay, yeah.
Now, another one, Jamie Dimon. I heard an interview with Jamie Dimon just the other morning.
I did. I think I heard that same interview with Maria Bartiromo.
Yeah, Maria Bartiromo.
I saw that coincidentally as well.
He was talking about China on the ascendancy and going to surpass the United States, and we would just have to resolve ourselves that was the way it's going to be.
Right now, Jamie Dimon he's had one of these big bank. Do you remember which one? I don't either. But he's a big name. When you hear his name a lot,
in the finance world,
Chase,
absolutely.
or we could find out certainly.
Yeah.
But he's definitely a big wheel in the finance and banking world.
Yes, he is, and he is completely satisfied with it being that way.
Well,
with
he's
China coming ahead and
yeah, this is
putting us in a subservient position.
This is tangential a little bit, but he strikes me as one of these that superficially, nominally, he's pro-market, pro-America, but he's really, I think, his purpose or his objective is to serve as a bridge between those whose instincts might be to recoil at the idea of getting involved with China and those who want to go full steam ahead with it and actually pursue that model, the Chinese model, which is what I think I think that's what we're undergoing right now. I think the elites and the power brokers in this country have decided, and the big corporations. I mean, that's why they're embracing all the woke nonsense, and they've concluded that the China model, which is essentially just state capitalism or fascism.
Yep.
You know, I think they've concluded that that's the model. They think it's efficient. They think it allows them, the smart people, to simply bypass all these inconvenient things like democratic input and little d, democratic input and liberty and markets, and go straight to what they think is best with their expertise. And that's the China model in a nutshell.
It is. It absolutely is.
In combination with a monopoly on firepower and imposing stiff jail sentences on those that disagree with the regime.
Exactly.
Okay, and capital punishment. It's a murderous. It's the mob. It's a nation. It's a criminal enterprise running a giant nation of close to 2 billion people.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better myself. Jamie Dimon is head of J.P. Morgan.
J.P. Morgan, right.
Jason, he was he was on the board of directors of the Federal Reserve.
There you go.
Now, it's interesting because the RAND Corporation, and if anybody's familiar with the RAND Corporation, they do all kinds of analysis and reports, and who knows what else they're involved in, because they are involved in a lot of dark off-color ops.
No, they've got their fingers in a lot of things.
Absolutely do.
Yeah.
But they have issued reports outlining the ascendancy of China by 2050 and spell it out in no uncertain terms that unless something is done, this is what it's going to be. And our military and administrative leaders are twiddling their thumbs.
I think they're more than just twiddling their thumbs. I think they're actively paving the way.
Yeah.
I think consciously actively paving the way. I think China, in reference to your early introduction there, the introduction of the show, I think China has so patiently insinuated itself into so many aspects of our society: cultural, entertainment, academic, business. They're following Sun Tzu's philosophy in the art of war of winning without firing a shot.
Yep.
So we are ultimately, I think, at war with China. And there have been many people who've warned about this for many, 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 many years. When I was growing up, in the 70s and early 80s, this is when things began to be coming from China that were made in China. And there was really a household policy where we're going to avoid buying things made in China if we possibly can. We object to that. We object to the slave labor. Now it's ubiquitous. You can't, if you take that posture, well, you can't own anything.
That's exactly right.
You can't buy a thing.
I prefer to buy American-made tools
absolutely.
and supplies.
Absolutely.
You go in the store thinking, well, this is an American brand, and you pick it up, made in China.
We've definitely outsourced our manufacturing to these places. And really, that was, we make reference to this frequently on the show, but that was one of the things that Donald Trump, I think that was really more, that's gonna survive as his greater legacy, even than I think the trying to stem the tide of illegal immigration.
I think so.
Because he was the first, and I go back to even Reagan, which is when I became kind of politically conscious for real, Carter somewhat, but especially Reagan. He was the first, including all the way back to then, who actually made a bona fide effort, an articulated effort, to push back against what he perceived as the growing threat of China, economically and militarily. And he actually did something about it, and they were starting to take it on the chin, you know. And I think that is why he is not the president now. I don't think it has anything to do with 80 million people voting for Joe Biden.
Right.
That I don't buy it. You know, I'm cynical. Maybe I'm susceptible to fanciful thinking, but I can analyze things and I can see what was happening, and that's my view.
Well, the forces arrayed against him. I mean, from all the way up and down the line, from inside the Republican Party, from the outside of the Republican Party, the Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, every organization was arrayed against Trump. And it's not because he was brash and sent out mean tweets and was a little crude at times and insulted people. That's not what it was about. It was about what we're talking about right now.
That's correct.
The ascendancy of China, and China has bought its way in.
To all of those entities, frankly. I mean, the Republican Party is really barely, incrementally, infinitesimally better than the Democrats. They're just not much. They say a few things. They sound good when they talk. Ultimately, they may even be worse because you don't know really how dangerous and how destructive they are.
That's right. That's exactly right. And to further their effort, they have what they call the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, they wax poetically about how this is similar to the Silk Road trade of ancient times, with simply an exchange of goods and trade and cooperation. Simply an economic investment. But the reality of it is, this is China's means of controlling strategic checkpoints and controlling the flow of strategic minerals, manufacturing, goods, people, everything.
That's right.
One of their first acquisitions in the West was the Panama Canal.
Right.
As soon as President Carter gave it away, and that in itself, that's a whole episode right there.
Right.
We won't get in too deep on that, but when Carter gave it away, and by the way, the Panamanian president who orchestrated that deal as well, he died shortly thereafter in a mysterious plane crash, I believe.
Right. That was the person that predated Noriega. Was that Torreos?
Torreos, yes. Torreos, yes. And anyway, they've set up this Belt and Road Initiative all through Europe, all through Africa, all through Asia.
Right.
And they want to control the strategic
land and sea trade routes. Yeah,
absolutely. And our political and military response to this soft aggression, as they like to call it. We have paper tigers in Washington in the military, running the military, some of whom won their awards
for administrative
valor. Which I'm not exactly sure what administrative valor is. I guess if you risk paper cuts and maybe bumping your leg on a file cabinet, I don't know. I guess that's administrative valor. I don't know.
I mean, having as the son of an actual, true, genuine combat officer who knows what really it takes to win actual decorations and medals. These people aren't the real deal.
Are not.
I mean, I don't make any pretense that I have that kind of
those people are very far and few between.
Right, but those are the people that are supposed to be in the military, and what we have right now are a bunch of political generals who have been hand-selected by these leftists. I mean, a lot of this happened during the Obama years. They purged our military and brought in these left-wing. Fundamentally, they're just left-wing academics who happen to go to West Point and wear that uniform. Very few of them have seen any actual real combat or behaved and performed in combat. Okay. And half of them are just left-wing, I think, tantamount to being moles for the communist ascendancy that we're talking about. I know that's harsh sounding, but that's what I believe is going on.
Well, I believe that as well, because they are completely ignoring this in favor of pursuing these woke, ridiculous campaigns throughout the military.
Right.
The military was never supposed to be a fun summer camp type place where everybody holds hands and sings Kumbaya.
Moreover, it's not even supposed to be a place where you carry out experiments for social justice and equality and fairness. In fact, it is the antithesis of that by its very nature.
Absolutely.
And, well, I mean, we would digress into a whole other discussion about the military, but its purpose fundamentally, I'm paraphrasing, I guess Rush Limbaugh was famous for saying their purpose was to kill people and break things.
Exactly.
And take territory. When diplomacy fails, you need a military that's able to do that. I'm not sure. I think we're rapidly losing our abilities in that regard, especially at the flag officer level and the leadership level. And it's I don't know. I mean, when things fail, they fail fast. And so
You're right.
I think we're in dangerous territory with respect to all that.
We are in dangerous territory, and if we don't put some soldiers back in command of the military, what we're going to have is just a fraternal organization where they worry more about the woke causes than anything else. And we have China, who has perpetually engaged in human rights abuses.
Without question.
And given the chance, they would think nothing of doing so across Europe and even here in the United States.
That's right.
In South America.
That's right.
They block internet usage for their citizens, and they demand that any internet company working in China does the same and provides them with the name of users and what have you. So,
and Google's happy to comply with their, right, that's right.
Facebook, Yahoo, on and on and on. Every internet company in China cooperates with the communist regime.
And therefore the military. And yet Google refused to take a contract or participate in a contract because it involved U.S. military spending. Yeah. Now, you tell me what you think that means. I mean, I really would. I wish somebody would call. We do take calls on this show. I wish somebody would call and engage us on this a little bit, or maybe push back. I want to, because I'm one of those people that I look at events or facts, and I mean, I consider myself to be nominally intelligent. So when something doesn't add up, that means there's missing information.
Exactly.
I mean, somebody's telling you, well, we're doing this because, and they start going into the mumble tank there. You're not telling me something.
Yep.
And these facts to me on the ground look very much like an orchestrated, planned effort to deconstruct this country between the complete ushering in of illegals at the border, breakdown of the border, intentional design, the absolute accommodation of China, and all the other things that this administration is doing and that the elites have been doing. I can't come up with another model or explanation for these events. So please, somebody else, I'd love to hear it. Maybe make me feel better. I don't know. I could use it.
I would love to hear that.
Yeah.
People complain over here about voting restrictions, voting suppression. I don't know of any voter suppression in this country. That's absolutely ridiculous. But you go to China, and China only allows 5 sanctioned religions. Now, we have any number of religions. Anyone that
it's a fundamental tenet of our Constitution.
As an inkling, can set up a little church somewhere.
That's right.
And very often they do, and form their own little religion.
Right.
Our Constitution protects that right. In China, you can only be 1 to 5, and if you belong to any other, like the Uyghurs or Falun Gong,
right?
You're persecuted over there. They allow trade unions. Woohoo! But you have no right to strike, and a member of the Communist Party must run the union. Perfect.
Well, and trade unionism is, a kindred spirit, a distant cousin of, it borrows a lot from socialistic thinking anyway.
It absolutely
So they
does.
can easily do all that and make that all work for them. And on the surface, fundamentally, it's still just a communist dictatorship in control of that economy and that nation.
That's exactly right. They have substantial barriers to women. Our feminists over here complain about things. They complain about the glass ceiling, and they complain that there aren't enough women. There's a disproportionate amount of women running big corporations, and the military is disproportionate with women in combat. Well, yeah, I guess it is, women in combat. In China, hey, you're there for a couple of reasons. One of them's in the kitchen, one of them's in the bedroom. I'm sorry to put it that way, but that's what they consider women in China to be.
And let's talk about some of the impacts of their. I think they've recently relented a little bit on their one-child policy, but let's talk about the one-child policy that they pursued for decades. Okay.
Yep.
It caused parents to perform selective abortions on their children.
Absolutely did.
Because everybody wanted, in Chinese culture especially, they wanted a son. If they could only have one, they wanted a son. What is the result? A huge imbalance between males and females in China, to the extent that most men are unable to find a mate.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I say many. At least half the male population is desperately looking there.
Yeah, in fact, they have forays into other countries to kidnap women and bring them back in.
Right. Now, I read, and this is interesting, and this actually, I think China, we don't want to give the impression that we think China is omniscient or omnipotent or this is unavoidable. People who do actuarial studies and all say that China has already reached a break point in their population, their replacement growth, and that, get this, they're saying by 2100 there'll only be about 450 million Chinese. I mean, they're saying that they are headed for a crash in their population, but that also is why that many argue that's why they're making their play now. If they're going to achieve world hegemony, they've got to do it like right today.
Right now, exactly. And with that, we are up against a commercial break, so stay tuned. We'll be back, and we're going to talk a little bit about COVID in the next segment.
Now that we've solved the China problem.
Yes. Stay tuned.
Hey, this is John Woodruff of Premier Equipment Company of Rocky Mountain Infield. If you've been shopping for a zero-turn mower lately, you've probably noticed that inventory is getting hard to come by. So come on down and see what we've got. We've got a showroom full. We have a showroom full of Exmark and Grasshopper zero-turn mowers. Everything from commercial to residential, everything in between. We've got a good relationship with our distributors. They tell us when we sell these, they've got more on the way. If you've been in the market for a zero-turn mower, come see me, John Woodruff from Premier Equipment.
Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Rocky Mount Prep is currently seeking 9th grade students interested in getting a head start on college and career. Beginning in August 2021, Rocky Mount Prep's College and Career Academy will allow students to begin earning free college and career credits from Nash Community College and North Carolina Wesleyan College while enrolled in high school. The Academy will also provide students who are interested in pursuing the military with an opportunity to gain both course and hands-on training that will prepare them to become a military officer. Enroll by August 9th for the College and Career Academy at rmprep.org.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
All right, we are back, and we are in almost 18 months of this COVID pandemic.
Seems even longer to me, but
we've been through masks, through lockdowns, through distancing, through
variants, vaccines, the Delta variant.
Got the Indian variant coming, and so on and so forth.
It's almost like it's just never going to go away.
Yeah, it does mysteriously seem that way. It really does, and it's interesting. Germany's largest newspaper has apologized for their coverage of the whole COVID thing.
Right.
Very interesting.
It is.
Very interesting. I think they went on to say that they apologize for the harm that they have done to society over there. And
I think the prescient quote here, see if I can pull this together. Okay, in a 5-minute YouTube video, BILD, that's the name of this paper,
Bild, yep.
BILD, Bild editor-in-chief Julian Reichelt said, millions of children in this country, of whom we are all responsible as a society, I would like to say what our federal government and our chancellor have not dared to say so far. I think there's a misprint here.
Probably.
We ask your forgiveness. We ask your forgiveness for a year and a half of politics who sacrificed you. In other words, they're essentially admitting that their coverage of COVID was histrionic, overblown, based largely on politics and not on facts on the ground, and they realize that it's cost the German nation an immense amount.
Financially and emotionally and psychologically.
Right, absolutely.
I think we're seeing that everywhere.
Everywhere. Now, for Germany for a German newspaper to admit that to me,
Well, yeah, the whole German culture is not an apologetic culture.
Well, exactly.
To put it
that's right. And they're pretty hard-nosed about things in general, as history shows, and that whole Teutonic thing is pretty can be pretty strident sometimes.
Well, it is. In fact, I worked at a facility that was run by Germans a few years ago, and they very much looked down upon most Americans.
Sure. Well, not that I say I sympathize with that.
Well,
but it's kind of like growing up in a military family. I remember how my father used to say, we'd get out off base, and he'd say, "Hey, civilians," because he's used to that disciplined, ordered existence,
sure.
And that's a common thread. Anybody who's ever lived on a military post has been around officers, or they talk like that, and that's just sort of there. And I think the Germans probably see it that way. Americans often come across as undisciplined and sloppy.
They do.
But I'll say this, and I'm digressing here a bit from the topic, but the reason for that is that it's not that Europeans don't have those folks too, or the people that appear as sloppy or indisciplined. In general, it's that this country has such a vibrant and free economy that everybody prospers to the point where the analogs in Europe of the people that we're talking about in America could never travel here and run around.
Right.
Our country is so prosperous, even modest, normal, everyday, folks can get on a plane and fly to Europe, and that's where they gain their perceptions of Americans.
Yeah,
we see sort of the creme de la creme. We don't see the folks in Europe who don't have some money and some standing in their societies. So
very true.
It's just like when Indian immigrants. They're all the Indians that we meet in this country are very bright, successful, great people to be around. We're not exposed to the so-called pariahs that they have in their society. Right. Okay, and they have a horrible caste system. India is the most stratified, rigid, unbelievably authoritarian in that way. If you're born into the wrong caste in that society, that's it for you.
That's right.
There is no transcending your station in life if you live in that. If you're born into that society, okay. But as a consequence, we're never exposed to any of those people. So the opinions we form of Indians tend to be very laudatory.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at this country, and we have people who were raised in poverty and ascended to one's a neurosurgeon, Ben Carson.
Exactly. We don't have a fixed class structure in this country the way they do in England. Anybody that knows people from Britain knows that they pigeonhole people immediately according to their born station, their accent, how they speak English, everything, and that's fixed. Yeah. And a lot of them who come over here, they say, "I wanted to get away from that."
Right.
Okay. Right. It's not that there aren't classes of people. It's that in this society, it's not codified into our structure and our government to where you're held back and you cannot ever transcend that. That's one of the important differences between the U.S. and these other societies around the world. That's a huge digression from our topic, which is to expose some of this COVID nonsense.
It is, but it's good information, and people need to think about that, because this country it's a country where the sky is the limit.
Right.
You basically can achieve. I know people who have very little education and who've been very successful in businesses.
Absolutely.
Because they worked hard.
They persevered.
Worked smart and they worked hard.
That's right, and they persevered.
Speaking of the whole hysteria around COVID, the Department of the Interior just made an announcement. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland just made an announcement. She said that they have lost 34 members of their staff with the Department of the Interior. Now that sounds pretty dramatic.
Well, it would if their staff were comprised of, say, 40 people, then I would be making, quite a note. But how many did you say were on their staff?
7,000. Plus the contractors and the consultants and those who were the temps and all of that who they keep track of and monitor and what have you. There's 7,000 people work for the Department of the Interior, and they've lost 34. Now, I kind of like to look at these things a little bit. I'm not a statistician. I'm not great with numbers.
But you can calculate percentages.
I can calculate a percentage.
Right. And
yes.
frankly, that puts you ahead of.
So I took the numbers based on the average number of deaths in the U.S. every year. 2.8 million people die every year in the United States. That's 7,000 a day.
For all various reasons.
For all causes.
All right.
These are all causes. So I figured out what the percentage was, and I applied that to the 7,000 employees of the Department of Interior. And in a given year, now this is a year, this is not the 18 months of the pandemic.
Right, encompassing the COVID.
For a year, which all of these people are counting 18 months and throwing that out.
Right,
like
scaling that as if it were a year, but not really scaling the numbers. They're acting that that's a year's worth of data when really it's a year and a half.
A year and a half, that's right. So based on the calculation for a year, they should lose roughly around 56 employees out of a base of 7,000.
So we should be celebrating. They're ahead of the curve.
They're ahead of the curve. They're ahead of the curve. And I am so sick of these people who come out and hype these numbers, who throw these numbers out there. Oh, this is shocking. We've lost 34 of our staff.
Well, they do this because they know that most people don't have a point of reference for these numbers. Okay? When you tell somebody that 50,000 people a year die, say due to automobile accidents, that seems horrid, dramatic. But there's 350 million people in this country. So if you calculate those percentages, it's a relatively small number of people.
It is.
I mean, not that anybody's life is trivial,
Sure.
Right. And, we shouldn't have to say that. I mean, I say this, it probably makes me seem kind of hard-hearted, but I resent even having to say those kinds of things. Just doggone it, you should know that nobody is dismissive of somebody's life. Of course not. I mean, we're trying to run a society here and figure out what's the best balance and trade-off between liberty and prosperity and all these things. And that, in fact, the automobile analogy is a good one, because if we applied the sensibilities and the protocols for driving in this country that we have for COVID, okay, we'd say, well, you know what, we got to get to a zero highway death rate. I think, and to do that, we could do that. We could say, okay, the speed limit is now nationally 20 miles an hour. If you go beyond 20 miles an hour, you are in severe violation of the law. Well, it's hard to get killed driving a car going 20 miles an hour. All right, but we as a society have decided that's not worth it. Okay, we're willing to sacrifice 30, 40,000 people a year, okay, so that we can drive 60, 75 miles an hour.
Right.
But the greater point is, I argue, and I think it should be fairly obvious, that if you did impose that rule, many, many more people would die as a result of no food distribution, okay, medical care would not be delivered. The actual net cost in life would be much greater if you went to that 20 mile per hour regime. That's what's happened with COVID, unquestionably. We have destroyed this country through a paranoid COVID lockdown protocol, and the consequences have been much greater than they would have had we done, literally nothing, like they basically did in Sweden.
Yep.
Okay. That's the analysis, I think, that is correct.
I tend to feel that way myself, and all of these vaccinations now, and what was interesting is the media was reporting the new cases as being a pandemic of the unvaccinated,
which was a lie.
Now, come to find out, I saw an article the other day, or actually just today, that said over half of all new cases were of vaccinated people.
Right. So So really what it boils down to is the vaccine doesn't work, okay, and now they want to make you take the vaccine because the vaccine doesn't work to protect them. I don't even follow that rationale.
It boggles the mind, and they continually put forth assertions that, number one, can't be proven, number two, I think are essentially false. They talk about, well, if you take the vaccine, you're going to have a much milder case if you get infected. Well, there were pretty mild cases back in the raging epicenter of the pandemic.
Right.
They were called asymptomatic.
Well, just, if you don't mind, review the little story you told me the other day about the individual you were talking to, a coworker, and you asked him to guess the number of people between a certain age.
Yes. From 0 to 17.
So you asked him this question.
I asked him this question. I asked him, tell me how many people from age 0 to 17 have died during this COVID pandemic.
As a result of using
As a result of COVID.
The with COVID.
COVID,
which is
correct.
dubious anyway.
Correct. With COVID. And he thought about it for a minute. He said, oh, geez. He said, it's got to be 10, 20,000.
Wrong.
I believe it was 34.
Yeah.
From 0 to 17.
Yeah.
Died of COVID.
Yeah, it's a low number. I thought it was about 10 times that. I thought it was about 340.
Man, it could be.
But it doesn't matter. 10 times nothing is still nothing. Okay, and that's
I can pull that up because like I say, I'm not that good with numbers.
Well, and you know, I sort of threw that out there. You know, sort of.
Let me verify that. Right.
Okay.
Quick.
Right, because
nonetheless, it's still
it's a statistically insignificant number.
It is.
Okay, and they've gotten people so ginned up in this country.
340. You're correct. 340.
Yeah. Okay.
340 people from 0 to 17 have died of COVID.
Right.
What they consider
nationwide
COVID deaths.
Since the onset of the pandemic.
18 months.
Right.
Now, I didn't pull these out of a hat. I didn't pull these numbers out of a hat. These numbers are from the CDC. Now, everyone says trust the CDC. Well, so you're going to refute these numbers? They're from the CDC. So 340 from 0 to 17.
Right, and just on the remote chance that somebody doesn't quite understand what the implication of that is, what this means is that if you're 17 years old or younger, you are at no risk from COVID.
No risk.
You probably stand a greater risk getting in your car to drive, get the vaccine, being killed by an auto than you are of actually getting COVID and dying from it.
Exactly. And, here in North Carolina, 2,600 people a year die on our highways.
Correct.
2,600 people die on North Carolina roads every year.
I mean, it's analogous to the lottery. You know, they say you're more likely to get struck by lightning than to win the lottery. Yeah, I mean, now, obviously, somebody wins.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not to say, but the COVID thing is like that. If you're going to organize your life around minimizing risks that are infinitesimally small, you can't function.
That's right.
You know, you can't function.
And with all the variants coming up right now, they're talking, oh, this one's much more infective, much more virulent, but they tend to kind of suppress the number of deaths and hospitalizations. You know, they talk about, oh, hospitalizations are up 500%. What does that mean? Don't give me a percentage. Tell me that, you know, last week we had this many, this week we have this many. I can figure the percentage.
Well, if you've got one thing and you go to two things, you've increased it by 50%. Well, no, 100%.
100%.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, when this whole thing started, they were talking about, oh, the hospital morgues are filling up. They're going to have 18-wheelers, refrigerated vehicles to store the bodies.
None of that happened.
And even if they had a little overage, hospital morgues typically are not that large.
Correct.
You know, they're not like regional mortuaries.
Right.
They have enough to handle the average number of people who pass away in a hospital at any given time.
Well, the overarching point here is they used a virus, a pathogen, that had really, I mean, I understand in the beginning we were going to do 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I'll accede to that, although I have some rather cynical views about all that too. But 2 weeks to flatten the curve, that was the initial promise, all right, to find out what was going on and where we were. Very quickly, everybody figured out this is a disease that has a very, very, very bad outcome for elderly,
yes,
and people with comorbidities, mostly obesity. Okay, just those two things alone, I dare say, comprise probably 80% of the fatalities.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you look at the 65 up age group, that was hit the hardest.
Correct.
And you throw obesity in on top of that, that demographic was hit hard as well.
Correct.
Through all the age groups.
And, I mean, I'm not saying the vaccines aren't beneficial. I mean, now it's an open question right now whether whether they last. Okay, whether they hold, whether you retain immunity, and they don't appear to be doing much for this Delta variant. We all saw what happened with the Democrats that ran down to fled Texas to avoid their responsibilities to vote.
Well, it was interesting. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, "Oh yeah, this no one has been vaccinated is getting this." I said, "Well, what about the Texas Democrats who went to Washington? They were all vaccinated."
Exactly.
And with that, we are. It's time for a commercial break.
Up against the proverbial hard break,
Up against the hard break. That's right. We may not be as smooth as they are on the big networks.
Yeah, but I think we're better, frankly. At least we say things they're not willing to say.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So we'll be right back after this, and when we come back, we are going. I've got a little video clip of the Tucker Carlson interview with Viktor Orban.
Great.
The Hungarian Prime Minister, and you won't want to miss that.
I agree. That is well worth the time spent to pay attention and watch. It really is.
Absolutely. So we'll be right back for more America in Danger.
This is Nicholas Bellamy at Premier Equipment. I'm going to talk about the 4540 Mahindra. It's 38 horsepower, 4-cylinder engine. The weight of this tractor is 4,000 pounds. This tractor is perfect for bush hogging, distance, small garden, a hunting club tractor. Comes with a 7-year warranty, 2-year bumper to bumper, additional 5-year on the powertrain. You can have this tractor for $200 a month, and we have 20 of these tractors in stock. Premier Equipment is open during the week from 8 to 5:30 and on the weekends from 8 to 12.
Are you afraid to answer the phone because of bill collectors? A Chapter 13 plan can help. Chapter 13 allows people with too many bills to work out a debt repayment plan under federal law. It helps you control your debts instead of your debts controlling you. Chapter 13 stops creditors from harassing you and stops repossessions and foreclosures. It allows you to answer the phone again without fear or worry. Call H. Frank Allen, Attorney at Law, a debt relief agency providing bankruptcy relief under the Bankruptcy Code.
All right, we are back, and you might have heard President Biden and other bureaucrats running down some of the Eastern European nations who were at one time part of the satellite of the USSR.
Yeah, they were Soviet satellite states.
Soviet satellite.
Really subject to a Soviet occupation is what it was.
Exactly. Hungary, Romania,
Czech
Ukraine,
Republic, Yugoslavia, now Bosnia and Croatia. They had that old Bosnian civil war when the Soviet Union fell apart.
Yep.
Bosnia basically went back to, Yugoslavia went back to their basically tribal inclinations, and they flew apart. And yeah.
Well, it's interesting because we are in the early stages of I guess you could call it a renaissance, for lack of a better term, in these nations, in some of these nations. In fact, one of them, I believe you were telling me, the Czech Republic has instituted.
They've actually proposed and passed their version of the Second Amendment. They have, I think that is amazing. They have basically codified into their governing documents that individuals have a right to own a firearm for self-defense. Okay, that is huge. Governments don't like armed citizens. It's just that simple. They don't throughout history, and that's why really, if I were to chide the founders for one thing, is that the Second Amendment should have been the First Amendment, because from all the other amendments and words in the Constitution are just that. They're words without the ability to back it up. And that Second Amendment, which puts firearms in the hands of citizens, that's the one that holds everybody accountable ultimately.
Absolutely.
So for the Czech Republic, a former communist Soviet bloc state, to do that, huge.
Absolutely amazing, yeah. Who was it that said power grows from the barrel of a gun?
Oh, one and only Mao Zedong from the Little Red Book that you were quoting last week.
There you go.
Right.
But anyway, Tucker Carlson did a good interview, and I typically don't like to run Fox clips because
they got plenty of viewers.
They have plenty of viewers, and people tend to look at Fox and say, "Oh, they're just blind followers of Fox."
Yeah.
Well, that's not what it is. Occasionally they have a good clip, and Tucker Carlson did an outstanding job, and I want you to watch this and listen very carefully to the things that Viktor Orban said.
The Prime Minister of Hungary.
Hungary.
Right.
That is correct. So take a look at this, and we'll be back to talk about it a little bit after it's over.
Of the nearly 200 different countries on the face of the earth, precisely one of them has an elected leader who publicly identifies as a Western-style conservative. His name is Viktor Orban. He's the Prime Minister of Hungary. Hungary is a small country in the middle of Central Europe. It has no navy. It has no nuclear weapons. Its GDP is smaller than New York State's. So you wouldn't think leaders in Washington would pay a lot of attention to Hungary, but they do, obsessively. By rejecting the tenets of neoliberalism, Viktor Orban has personally offended them and enraged them. What does Viktor Orban believe? Just a few years ago, his views would have seemed moderate and conventional. He thinks families are more important than banks. He believes countries need borders. For saying these things out loud, Orban has been vilified. Left-wing NGOs have denounced him as a fascist, a destroyer of democracy. Last fall, Joe Biden suggested he's a totalitarian dictator. Official Washington despises Viktor Orban so thoroughly that many, including neocons in and around the State Department, are backing the open anti-Semites who are running against him in next April's elections in Hungary.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much. So in 2015, hundreds of thousands of migrants appear on your southern border. They appear all over Europe. They stream into Germany. The rest of the EU says, welcome, please come. We can handle it. We're strong enough. Hungary stands alone in saying no. Why? Why did you take a different position on migration from other European countries?
That was the only reasonable behavior. If somebody, without getting any permission on behalf of the Hungarian state, cross your border, you have to defend your country and to say, guys, stop. And if you would like to cross or you would like to come, there's a legal procedure, we have to do it. But you can't cross, without any kind of limitation and permission and any contribution and control of the Hungarian state. It's dangerous. You have to defend your people against any danger. Many European countries decided to open a new chapter of their own history of the nation. They call it New Society, which is a post-Christian, post-national societies. They believe firmly that if different communities, even huge number of, let's say, Muslim communities, and the original inhabitant, let's say, Christian communities are mixed up, the outcome of this will be good. There is no answer whether it will be good or bad, but I think it's very risky. And the chance that it will be not good, but it will be very bad is obvious. And each nation has the right to take this risk or to reject this risk. We Hungarians decided not to take that risk, to mix up our society. That's the reason why they attack Hungary so harshly, and that's the reason why my personal reputation is very bad. I'm treated like the black sheep of the European Union personally, and sometimes Hungary as well, unfortunately.
But it's a little strange. I don't think Joe Biden has ever referred to Xi Jinping, for example, who has murdered many of his political opponents famously, as a totalitarian thug. Why would he single you out? And not just you, by the way, the Polish government as well.
The problem is the success. So it's a real challenge for the liberal thinkers that what is going on in Central Europe, Poland and in Hungary as well. In Hungary more outspoken probably. We are speaking probably too much anyway on our intentions. So what is going on here is building up a society which is very successful economically, politically, culturally, even in demography we have some success, family policy. So what you can see here could be described as a success story. But the fundamentals of this success are totally different than it is wished and run and created by many other Western countries. So the Western liberals cannot accept that inside the Western civilization there is a conservative national alternative which is more successful at the everyday life, at the level of than the liberal ones. That's the reason why they criticize us. They are fighting for themselves, not against us. But we are an example that somebody or a country which is based on traditional values, on national identity, based on tradition of Christianity, could be successful or sometimes even more successful than a leftist liberal government.
Your opponents are a coalition of former communists and anti-Semites. Is it strange to see the American left rooting for a coalition that includes anti-Semites?
Yeah, let's say if you would have asked me several years ago whether could it happen that the ex-communist political forces and the anti-Semite right is forming a coalition and running together at the election against a pro-Israeli and pro-American, pro-NATO, Western-oriented government as we are, my answer would have been no, it's impossible. But now the international communities accept it. So I understand that here in Hungary the political parties would like to get power as soon as they can, therefore they try to make a broad coalition against the ruling government. Okay, but to be accepted that by the international community so easily, I'm surprised. Especially the behavior in America is totally new experience for me.
I've noticed in the last few nights in Budapest, I've run into a number of Americans who have come here because they want to be around people who agree with them, who agree with you. Do you see Budapest as a kind of capital of this kind of thinking?
The capital of that kind of thinking, or one of the capitals, because the other Central European countries are also very competitive and producing very nice ideas and organizing that kind of communities of conservative and Christian Democrats thinkers as we do. We cooperate with that countries, so that kind of networks are getting closer to each other. It's getting more and more real Central European network. But not only thinkers. Ordinary citizens, average citizens are moving to Central European countries. It's not too dynamic at this moment, but the signs are clear. Many Christian families and conservative families who think that Western Europe is not secure enough, the future is unstable, the public security is not provided, and the ideological direction of the countries or the basic values of the countries built on is changing not to their taste or their intention. They are looking for other places. So if you go to the Hungarian countryside, you can find West European families who move to Hungary. First to have the second house, because inside European Union we have a free movement. So first to have second house and then spending more and more time here. So we can't exclude the future of the European history when there will be a new migration from west to the east.
Within Europe?
The Christians and the conservatives try to find a better home. First America first, is a very positive message here in Central Europe. Because it means if for Donald Trump, America first, for us, Hungary could be first as well. And let's cooperate on that basis.
Right.
So that was a very good foreign policy, very effective, and we cooperated very well. The same with Bibi, with Netanyahu, who is a good friend of the Hungarians, and when he was in power, he always invested a lot of energy to have a good relation with the Central European countries. We respect it very much, but he lost also. So the Hungarian conservative Christian, Judeo-Christian democratic thinking lost to major international supporter, and the opponents came into power. So this is a totally new circumstance around Hungary. For me as a politician, it's a strong challenge, how to handle it.
are you worried that there will be international interference in your election in Hungary?
That will happen. We are not worried of that. We are prepared for that. Obviously, the international left will do everything what they can do, probably even more, to change the government here in Hungary. We are aware of that, and we are prepared for that, how to take the fight and fight back.
When the President of the United States describes you as a totalitarian thug, which is a very serious thing to say about somebody, I would note, I mean, that suggests that, why wouldn't the Biden State Department work to prevent you from being reelected?
I think sooner or later the Americans will realize that issues in Hungary must be decided by the Hungarians. And it's better even for the leftist liberal government in the United States to have a good partner, which is a conservative Christian democratic, supported long-term by the people, Hungarian people. It's better to have that than a government which is supported by America and take the position but losing after several months and creating destabilization and uncertainty. So not loved but stable partner is better than the uncertain new one. That I hope the Americans will understand that.
Interesting. And the sad part about it, I had to cut about 10 minutes out of that clip.
Well worth digging up and watching in its entirety.
Absolutely is. The man is just so crystal clear on what he believes and what at one time were American values.
That's right. And moreover, I would pose this very simple question. Ask yourself, why is Central and Eastern Europe pursuing these more, for lack of a better term, conservative and classically liberal types of concepts? Freedom of the press and free markets, because they had a belly full of Soviet communism for 50 years that destroyed their societies. Hungary, Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, Belarus. Who else is on the list? There's a bunch of them.
Oh yeah, Ukraine.
Right, and they're all moving more, and especially those right there around Hungary and Poland. They're moving in that direction. So that I would just pose that they've had a first-hand experience. Please, United States, let's not have to go through that ourselves to learn the benefits of what we already have and have had historically.
But he made an interesting point. He was talking about liberalism being an uncertain and extremely risky path with all likelihood of being a failure.
Right.
And at the same time, the liberty, the Christian concepts, the family, the conservative foundations, as all being a high outcome of success.
That's right. High degree of success.
A high degree of success, absolutely, a high degree of success. I would highly suggest that you look that interview up and watch it a couple times and listen to these things.
Right.
And we may just talk about it some more next week on American Danger, but right now we are out of time.
We'll take a 10,000-minute break, we'll be back after that about this time. So.
Yes, we will. So long break. Right. So look at these things for yourself during the week.
Please.
And tune in next Saturday night at 6:30 for more America in Danger. I'm Robert Cressionnie.
I'm John Gatsis.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.